Sam, we are here today to talk about one of the most fun topics for the both of us, and that's the culture audit. Can I start off by asking you, what is the culture audit?
Well, culture audit, and Tom, it's great to be here, by the way. And yes, this is a fun topic because we're both passionate about it, but it really makes a difference for an organization. And this is going to be the shortest, quickest path to seeing transformation in an organization is always through the culture, because that's at the core of all transformation. It happens in the culture, then it emanates. So the culture audit is a tool that we created over 15 years ago that's available in over 20 languages that positions us to help leadership measure all of the critical areas of an organization's culture so they know whether or not they have a sustainable high performance culture, or they know where their weaknesses are, or they know where their strengths are, and they know what they need to do to continue to support what they're doing, or maybe to overhaul what they're doing. An audit thoroughly measures ethics in the culture. It measures the establishment of the organizational beliefs and values. It measures where is the focus of the people, because it makes a big difference whether they focus on those areas they can control and they make decisions and move forward, or whether they're focused on things they can't control, which means they're bogged down and fear comes in. It measures whether people feel valued, whether they're making quality decisions. Yes, we know how to measure that. It measures employee engagement. We actually measure accountability in the organization, speed of implementation, level of trust in the culture, the quality of communication. We measure whether or not there's a presence of innovation and change, emotional safety, the strength of leadership, the amount of stress in the workplace culture, and we also look at diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's quite thorough.
Sam, what's the real purpose behind this from the business perspective? You've been a business owner long before you became a Hall of Fame speaker and consultant. Why does culture matter to the business person or the business itself?
Look, Tom, you can make money in a business doing things the wrong way. And so what happens is many times an organization may not be doing things the best possible way. They're making money, and because they're making money, it covers up these mistakes or these shortcomings. The highest performing organizations that I've had the opportunity to work with, to observe, to consult, to case study, are always those organizations whose culture operated at the highest level. Because when you create that high performance culture, what happens is you naturally attract the best people. You retain the best people. And if you have the best people on your team, you're going to win. So if you want performance in your organization to be at the highest possible level, it doesn't come from cracking a whip. It doesn't come from getting in people's faces. It doesn't come from walking into someone's office and saying, I'm going to hold you accountable. It comes from creating a culture that inspires people to choose to be their best and to be accountable. And the culture audit enables a leader to know what's going on in that culture, whether they're on the right track or they're not. Because as many times we think we're on the right track, and then all of a sudden we get run over.
One of the things that has interested me in my professional career is number one, how companies respond to legal requirements by putting compliance programs in. But the flip side of that is the regulators evolve in their thinking as well. And we had a major evolution in the Department of Justice's thinking over the past couple of years around corporations who find themselves in fraud enforcement actions, white collar enforcement action, accounting enforcement actions, corruption enforcement actions, where the DOJ says, we're not going to look at your culture, and we're going to measure that as a part of our overall assessment of a fine and penalty. This was something that had been coming, but it's also something that if didn't scare business executives and compliance professionals, it made them uneasy because they didn't know how to respond to that. They thought culture, that's something different. That's if we do business, we know what our risks are. Or we at least can figure out what our risks are. If we can figure those out, we can assess those risks and then put a risk management strategy in place, train on that strategy, monitor the results, and then improve as appropriately. And it struck me, Sam, that risk could be viewed in a similar light. Culture could be viewed in a similar light, that you could assess it, Then you could put a strategy in place to improve it if you needed to. You could work towards that through either training, education, or communication. You could monitor the results of that, and then you could improve as appropriate. Does that sort of dynamic work in the world that you've been in?
Absolutely. That's absolutely true, Tom. And here's what we've discovered. So often leaders are focused on the tactics of their business. How do we manufacture more widgets? How do we sell more widgets? How do we provide more financial services? Whatever it is that the service or business that they're in. The reality is that when we as leaders focus on our people and let them focus on the business, then it's like putting a multiplier on the number of brains that are working on growing that business. We see our culture from our vantage point as a CEO, as an executive. In my companies, I've always seen the culture as I thought it was, but it was until that we started asking our people what they were experiencing that we got the true view of what was going on in the culture. So it doesn't matter what the leader thinks the culture is. What matters is what truly is the culture. And by having an independent, unbiased organization such as the Accountability Institute come in and be able to measure a culture, then you have evidence of exactly what that culture is, what's good, what's bad, what's in between. And then you know exactly what to do to transform the culture. Or if the culture is just rocking it out, how do we sustain this? Because sustainability is important. There are a lot of great cultures that we've seen that have deteriorated over time because they were great at building it, but they may not have been as good at sustaining it, especially as they work through mergers, acquisitions. So this information is critical.
You used a great phrase there, seen from my or our vantage point. Why is it so important that, or maybe why do leaders not get blinded, but don't really understand about what culture is and what their true culture down the organization is, literally from the boardroom to the shop floor? How do they get stuck from their vantage point?
Jacket in my closet, Tom. And if I pull that jacket out and I put it on and I look in the mirror, I'm thinking, I like this. This looks good. I'm going to wear this to this party, this wedding, this event. Now, I've got kids. They see me pull that jacket out and they cringe. They go, Dad, you're not really going to wear that out of the house, are you? It's two different perspectives, okay? So, our perspective as senior leadership may not be the same perspective as the masses of the organization. And there's a reason for that. We're looking at things from a different side. We may think people appreciate something, but they don't. It's like giving someone a gift. You bought the gift, bought the gift that you wanted, not the gift that they wanted. And then from that standpoint, they might go, this is nice. I would never use this. It's the same thing in culture. What we're putting out as senior executives and leaders may not be what the people want. And we need to know that. And so it's like a gift giving time. We go to our kids and we go, what is it that you're interested in? What is it that's important to you? What would you like? And then we try to build something around that. Going to the people and asking them, how are you experiencing the culture? Are you feeling a lot of stress? I might not be feeling stressed, but you might be feeling stressed. I don't know that if I don't ask you. And when I ask you and you tell me, then as a concerned and accountable leader, one that realizes that I'm accountable to you and for you, I'm going to make the adjustments necessary in the organization to make sure that you have a place to work that you're proud of, that you want to shout from the rooftop, that you want to tell your family and friends, come work here. We have clients where when we assess the people, they go, we would never tell our family and friends to come work here. Now, I don't want to lead that kind of organization, but they exist. And it's through the culture audit that we can figure out if they're there and then what we need to do to fix it.
Sam, who would you suggest the culture audit be used to assess? Should it literally be from the boardroom to the shop floor? Should it be middle management? Should it be top management? Who would you suggest?
This is critical. And the answer to that is simply this: everyone. If you just assess senior leadership, then you only get their view of what the culture is. We need to assess everyone in the organization. Now, by everyone, let me qualify that a little bit. There's some very large organizations we've worked with. And so they may assess a diagonal slice of the organization. So let's say you have 25,000 employees. That's different than if you have 250 employees. If you have 250 employees, I say let's assess everyone. If you have 2,000 employees, I'd assess everyone. If you have 25,000 employees, then maybe we only need to assess 2 or 3,000 and have a diagonal slice from top to bottom across divisions. And then that's enough of a quantity to give us a real true answer as to what's going on in the organization. We don't have to reach all 25,000, but we have the ability to do that.
Sam, how does the culture audit work after the assessment's been done? What does a company get back, or what should they get back in forms of data and information?
And this is where it really gets exciting, Tom, because it's not just about asking the questions and collecting the data. That's important. It's what do we do with it? And let me tell you, the people when they spend their time to fill it out, and it's only 10 or 12 minutes, it's not a ton of time. But if you ask someone for their opinion, they want to know that they're heard and they want to know that action's being taken. We create an executive report that's approximately 125 pages long. Now, you don't have to read all 125 if you don't want to, because right at the front, we have our dashboard that has charts on the 16 areas that we measure right away in these key areas where you are and what that number means. And then we go deeper into the questions that we asked, what the responses were, and look much deeper, as well as create an action plan for each area that we measure, the things that you should be thinking about. That report is what you then plan. This is what we're going to do this next year. That report is at the very core of any education, training, development, transformation that you want in your organization will all flow from that report. And that's where the true value is.
Sam, is a culture audit a one-time, one-stop shop that cures all, or does it need to be done on some type of rotating basis?
First of all, the audit itself doesn't cure anything. What the audit does is it tells us as leaders what we need to do to cure what's not working. We still have to take that action. But the key in the audit is we recommend that you do this at least once a year. And you could do it at 6 months, or if you did it annually, you have the opportunity to then say, okay, here's the transformation. This is where we were. This is where we are now. This is how far we've come. And so now you can be proud of that transformation. But then you go, okay, what do we need to do moving forward? So this becomes a regular tool that you use within your organization. Not only do we provide that executive report each time, but we also provide a report over time that shows how you've progressed, how you've moved. So you can compare this year, last year, the year before. You can see that linear progression. You have the ability to substantiate that what you're doing in the culture, that what you're doing as a leader is making a difference for your people and is creating a better place to work. That in itself becomes a marketable tool when you're looking to hire and attract the best people.
We've had a question come in. I want to just read it to you. Our workforce has multiple languages. We use multiple languages out on the shop floor and in the office. Can multiple languages be used to input the data or take the data or ask the questions and then get one report back in English?
Absolutely. And so we find we've used this, we've used the culture audit globally, and we get these amazing results. But you can go to South Dakota, and in a production facility, there could be 4 languages spoken on the floor because there's immigrants from around the world that have come there. So we have over 20 languages, and we're constantly adding new languages, and we can add new languages upon request. And then the report itself that comes back is in English. The responses, there is one question where people can actually free form their response, and that will be in the language that they're typing in, but that can easily be converted. So you have the ability to reach everyone in your organization, no matter where they are, no matter what language they speak, and then have the information come back to you in a digestible form so you are able as a leader to make good decisions.
And we've actually had another question come in. I'm in a regulated industry. Are the results auditable?
Are the results auditable? From what standpoint, Tom?
Can they go back and look at the underlying questions, see the data entry so that they can draw a direct line from input of data to the end result of the report?
We maintain all that data. And while we do not collect any identifiable information, it's totally anonymous. So we have no idea who sends in what. And we really don't want to know who fills it out. But we're able to audit the data to make sure that the data is correct and therefore that we're drawing the correct conclusions.
And equally importantly, can you show an external party, whether it be a regulator or an external auditor, this is the incoming data we got, and this is the report we derived based upon that data. We audit back
Absolutely.
that way as well.
Absolutely.
So you've talked about leadership's role in this. What's the role of middle management in taking this data and moving either culture forward, moving with greater accountability? How would you suggest middle management utilizes? Do they have to interpret it and they move on their own, or is it part of a comprehensive strategy moving forward?
Best case scenario is when senior leadership gets the culture audit executive report and we talk about it and they look at it, that they take on commitments to the changes that they want in their organization. And when these changes, when this transformation is driven from senior leadership, then what happens is it's just a matter of providing the tools to mid-level leadership so they can step it out. If you're asking mid-level leadership to make that determination without the support of senior leadership, then it doesn't happen. But when it flows from senior leadership, and we have tools that are available that mid-level leadership can actually utilize, or certified accountability advisors that can be brought in to help mid-level leadership step this out in their areas. So it makes it easy to implement, but it's always with the full support and backing of senior leadership.
You've talked about how this can be used going forward, but many, particularly compliance professionals, feel overwhelmed when they get a report back on 16 different areas of culture assessment. Can the report help a kind of HR professional, compliance professional, internal audit, doesn't matter, legal professional, prioritize the areas that need immediate work or immediate remediation and then work down a list in a sort of logical process manner?
Absolutely. And that's key. Our goal, Tom, is not to overwhelm someone with information, but just to provide the real facts. Then it's through consultation that we look at and go, you know what? Let's start with this and let's work on fixing this. And once we fix this, we know these other things will move in the right direction as well, because there's usually key drivers in the culture that will impact multiple levels. And so we've figured out what those key drivers are. And that's where we want to encourage leadership in an organization to focus. Not trying to fix everything all at once, but let's look at some of the key drivers. Let's get better alignment in those areas. And then once we do that, let's just reassess and then let's fine tune where we're going to focus moving forward.
Sam, as we move towards the end of our time for this webinar, I wanted to maybe ask you to look back and explain or tell us about the work you've done literally over the past 15 or 20 years, which has led to the culture audit. This is not something you dreamed up 6 months ago and developed. This is something you literally have worked on, refined, fine tuned, utilized, beta tested with numerous companies leading to the product we're talking about now. Could you tell us about that journey from Sam's perspective?
It's been quite a ride, Tom. We've been doing this over 15 years. We're on version 5 with small iterations in between. We were originally started measuring one thing, and that was accountability. And now we measure 16 different indices to give us this depth of report. We've utilized experts in assessment tools from around the world to help us bring this forward. We had a client in the United States that had an office in Quebec, Canada, that needed it in French. So we brought on a second language, which was French, and now we're over 20 languages. It's been quite the journey. The goal was to be able to look inside of an organization and figure out what makes it tick. And what we know to be true is products and services are different from one industry to another. But what remains the same is people. People want to be treated a certain way. People want to be involved in a certain way. People want to make a difference. People want to matter. People want to be associated with an organization where they feel that they have the ability to deliver value to that organization. All this happens inside of the culture. And we've just been very fortunate to be on this journey for 30 years. In the last 15 plus, we've had this amazing tool that's allowed us to look at what's going on in the organization so that when we work to make a better organization, we aren't doing it based on some unproven theory. We're not doing it based on a hope or a whim or a wish. We're making these changes based on facts where we've seen these changes make a difference in other organizations. And then through the culture audit, we're able to help an organization be their very best, perform their very best, exceed their goals, create a place where people love to work. That's very satisfying, Tom.
And then do you have any sense or even examples where, because of the work that you have done with organizations, you've actually seen an improvement, not in culture, but really on the bottom line? Because that's something that every business executive has to be concerned with.
Every time we've worked with a client, we've seen this improvement in what we measure through the audit. We always ask, what's it look like on the bottom line? Culture connects directly to the bottom line. We had a client that we worked with, and we saw 80% improvement in several of the indices over the course of 1 year. 80%. Now you think about that. Their performance just went crazy. And their profits, that they were the most profitable that year they'd ever been. They paid out the biggest bonuses that they ever paid out. And for the first time in the history of the organization, after they paid their bonuses, their people didn't leave. They stayed. They wanted to be there. They wanted to come back. When you work to create this kind of culture, whether you're an organization with 125 people or 125,000 people, whatever you invest in the culture is going to come back manyfold on the bottom line, because you create an environment where people want to be their best. And if they want to be their best, they're going to perform their best. And it's only when our people perform their best that the organization can perform its best.
Sam, we are near the end of our time for this episode, or this webinar rather, but we're going to link to the culture audit in the show notes, and we're going to link to a scheduling app where people who want to take a look and take a deeper dive into the culture audit can visit with both Sam or I, or one of us singularly. I greatly look forward to our next webinar together.
Absolutely, Tom. So it's an important conversation. I look forward to continuing it and helping those people that are watching and listening so they can create a better business.